April 2nd, 1968, hung heavy over Zeitoun, Cairo's working-class pulse still raw from the Six-Day War's sting. In a public transport garage, a fluorescent bulb buzzed, casting jagged shadows on oil-stained concrete. Farouk Muhammad Atwa, a Muslim mechanic, wrestled a stubborn transmission, his calloused hands smudged with grease. The air reeked of diesel, but a restless tug pulled him outside, his boots scraping pavement. A dog's bark pierced the distant hum of traffic. Across the street, St. Mary's Coptic Orthodox Church stood, its dome a silent guardian under stars. A glow caught Farouk's eye, not streetlights, but a warm light pulsing atop the dome. A woman stood there, robed in radiant white, serene as if rooted to stone. His mechanic's mind screamed danger. Help! Farouk's shout sliced the night, echoing off shuttered windows. She's on top of the church. She's going to jump. His heart hammered, voice raw with urgency. Doors creaked, footsteps rushed. Hassan, the baker's son, sprinted over, apron flapping. Farouk, what's wrong? He panted. Up there, Farouk pointed breathless. She's on the dome. He squinted, confused. Her stillness wasn't panic, but peace. Neighbors gathered, Mahmoud clutching her shawl, children at parents' knees, their faces lit with awe, not fear. Mahmoud's voice quavered, barely audible over the prayer beads clinking. It's the Virgin Mary, peace be upon her. Farouk's shout faltered, his mind grappling. How is she standing there? He muttered, half to himself. No ropes, no ladder. Hassan gripped his shoulder, voice low. My grandfather told tales of heaven touching earth. This feels like one. The air shifted, carrying a clean scent, like rain on stone, not diesel. Father Ibrahim burst from the church, robes rustling, grey beard catching streetlight. The priest, a fixture in Zeitoun for decades, stared upward, his face softening from shock to reverence. Brothers and sisters, he called, voice steady yet trembling. She blesses us with her presence. His words wove through the crowd, Muslims and Christians side by side, their murmurs rising like a hymn, Arabic blending with Coptic. Farouk's logic scrambled. A projector? An illusion? But the woman's glow pulsed, her hands blessing each face below. Dr. Ahmed Fahmy, a physician, pushed through, binoculars in hand, muttering, mass hallucination. He adjusted the lenses, then froze, seeing robes move in a breeze no one felt. This can't be, he whispered. Farouk turned to him. Then what is it, doctor? You tell me. Fahmy shook his head, voice tight. I don't know, but it's real. The crowd swelled, hundreds now, their footsteps a soft drumbeat. Vendors' tea kettles hissed, jasmine scent mingling with that clean, unearthly air. Mahmoud knelt, tears on her cheeks, rosary beads clicking. She sees our sorrows, she said to a neighbor. Children's whispers hummed, their eyes wide. The woman lingered, her light unwavering, until dawn's first rays dimmed her glow. The crowd stayed, hushed, as if the night held its breath. Farouk trudged to his garage, the transmission forgotten. His rag, tucked in his pocket, carried that strange scent, clean, like mountain air. He paused at the door, staring at the now-dark dome, his heart shifted, no wrench able to fix it. The next night, the crowd doubled, spilling past the street, their prayers a low tide of sound. Farouk stood among them, quieter now, watching. Dr. Fahmy returned, camera clicking, his skepticism fraying. Optical illusions don't feel like this, he told Farouk, voice unsteady. Farouk nodded. It's not just seeing. It's feeling. When the light flared again, brighter, the crowd gasped. The woman reappeared, doves of light humming softly, sparkles dusting the pavement. Warda, a Muslim woman with scarred hands from an accident, edged closer, drawn by whispers of miracles. Warmth flooded her fingers, pain dissolving. She stared at her hands, now whole, and cried, Allah be praised. Dr. Fahmy rushed over, his stethoscope cold as he checked her. Her fingers were gone, he said, stunned. This was documented. Warda's tears fell, her voice soft. She looked at me. She knew me. The crowd's chants grew, a tapestry of faiths under the dome's glow, the air thick with the scent of roses. Farouk stood, heart full, as Zeitoun became a place where miracles felt like home. By mid-April 1968, Zeitoun's alleys thrummed with the footsteps of thousands, their prayers a low hum weaving Muslim and Christian voices under St. Mary's Coptic Orthodox Church. The dome's glow, once a shock, now drew pilgrims like moths, their tea glasses clinking, their whispers carrying the scent of jasmine. Farouk Muhammad Atwa, the mechanic who first mistook the luminous woman for a jumper, stood in his garage, fielding questions from strangers. What was she like that night? A journalist asked, her pen scratching over the samovar's hiss. Farouk rubbed his grease-stained hands, that clean, unearthly scent still sharp in his memory. She was light, he said. She was peace. On April 15th, rain pattered on cobblestones, its rhythm blending with murmured hymns as the dome flared again. The woman in white stood serene, her robes flowing, doves of light humming softly, their sparkles dusting the crowd. Dr. Ahmed Fahmy, camera in hand, stood beside Inspector Mahmoud Hossein, whose notebook was brimming with witness accounts. No wires, no projectors, Hossein muttered, his voice clipped. I've checked the dome twice. Farouk leaned in. Still think it's a trick, Inspector? Hassan's eyes narrowed. I'm here for facts, not miracles. But these stories. He flipped a page, words scrawled in tight rows. They're too alike. Dr. Fahmy adjusted his binoculars, voice taut. Her robes move like no light I've studied. This isn't hysteria. Farouk frowned. Then what, Doctor? You're the expert. Fahmy's jaw tightened. I'm starting to think we need new rules for what's possible. Words spread like sparks through Cairo, newspaper headlines buzzing about lights over Zeitoun. The Egyptian government, wary of post-war unrest, sent officials, their boots clicking as they circled the church. Inspector Hossein grilled on Mahmoud, her rosary beads clacking softly. You saw her clearly? He asked. She nodded, voice firm. The Virgin, peace be upon her. Her light cooled my heart's ache. Hossein scribbled, unconvinced but thorough. His report, filed April 20th, found no hoax, no hidden devices, only consistent testimonies. The Coptic Church, cautious, formed a committee under Patriarch Cyril VI. Father Ibrahim met them in his study, the air thick with the scent of incense and old books. 20 years I've served here, he said, his voice steady. This is her presence, blessing us all. A young investigator, skeptical, pressed. Could it be an illusion? Atmospheric light. Ibrahim smiled. See the crowd, Muslims, Christians united. Is that an illusion? Dr. Claude Bouchard, a French physicist, arrived with instruments, his voice sharp over the hum of his equipment. Light refraction, perhaps, he told Fahmy, testing the dome's glow. But this energy, it's not normal. Fahmy, his skepticism fraying, countered. The photos show her face, her hands. Explain that. Bouchard shook his head, the click of his Geiger counter faltering. I can't yet. By May, the apparitions surged, appearing thrice weekly, sometimes for hours, drawing 250,000 on feast days. Their chants rose, a tapestry of Arabic and Coptic, the air heavy with the scent of roses, though no flowers grew. Warda, her healed hands a testament, spoke to a British reporter, her voice clear over the crowd's hum. I was broken, she said, fingers flexing. She made me whole. Fahmy, now tracking healings, examined her again, his stethoscope cold. Her records showed severed tendons, he told Farouk, voice low. Now nothing. Like the injury never was. Farouk's eyes widened. You're calling it a miracle? Fahmy sighed. I'm calling it evidence I can't ignore. On June 10th, oil seeped from the church walls, its drip echoing, its scent of jasmine and roses holy. Pilgrims pressed cloths to the stone, their gasps sharp as healings spread. A blind girl, guided by her father, touched an oil-soaked rag and cried, I see her light. Fahmy's flashlight danced as he checked her eyes. Congenital blindness, he muttered, stunned. Gone in moments. International journalists swarmed, their cameras clicking like cicadas. A reporter cornered Father Ibrahim. Why the Virgin Mary? She asked. His voice was calm, weighted. Her silence speaks. Look at the unity, the healings. Imam Abdullah, the mosque's elder, addressed his flock, his voice crackling over the loudspeaker. Mayim is ours too. Allah's mercy shines here. Christians nearby nodded, their crosses glinting beside Qurans. The government, recognizing the need for unity in a fractured nation, promoted the pilgrimage. By August, trains rumbled from Alexandria, pilgrims' footsteps a heartbeat through Zeitoun. On August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption, 500,000 gathered, their murmurs a tide under the dome's glow. The woman appeared at sunset, doves humming, her light a chorus of sparkles. Fahmy's camera shook as he took the photo. 200 healings tonight, he told Hossein, voice raw. Cancer, paralysis, gone. Hossein, skepticism crumbling, closed his notebook. I'm out of explanations. Farouk, nearby, met his gaze. Maybe it's not about explaining, Inspector. Maybe it's about believing. The air thickened with jasmine and oil, chants rising like a prayer needing no words, as Zeitoun forged faith from doubt under a dome where heaven touched earth. By summer 1969, Zeitoun's streets carried a quieter pulse. The roar of 500,000 pilgrims had softened to thousands, their footsteps a gentle echo on the cobblestones. The air still held the scent of roses, mingling with the clatter of tea glasses and murmured prayers from Muslims and Christians gathered under St. Mary's Coptic Orthodox Church. The luminous woman appeared less often, her glow a faint whisper against Cairo's night sky, yet the faithful returned, their voices a steady hum of hymns and Quranic verses. Farooq Muhammad Atwa, the mechanic whose shout 3 years ago sparked this vigil, stood among them, his garage now a stop for pilgrims. A young woman from Alexandria, her prayer beads clicking, asked, "You saw her first, didn't you?" Farooq's calloused hands paused, that clean, unearthly scent still sharp in his memory. "I thought she was falling," he said, voice low. "Turns out she lifted us." On a warm September night, the dome flickered, and the woman appeared, her robes flowing like a soft hymn, doves of light humming faintly, their sparkles dusting the crowd. Warda, her healed hands a living testament, stood near the church, sharing her story with a local mother, Amina, whose son limped from a birth defect. "I was broken," Warda said, fingers flexing. "She saw me and I'm whole." Amina's voice trembled, clutching her boy. "Could she help my son?" Warda smiled. "Pray, sister." She sees him too. Dr. Ahmed Fomi, his skepticism worn thin, carried a notebook thick with healing records. Over 1,000 now, from cancers to paralysis. He stood with Inspector Mahmoud Hossain, whose police reports had become a chronicle of the inexplicable. "Another 100 cases this year," Fomi said, his stethoscope dangling. "Hospitals confirm them all." Hossain, his uniform retired, but his pen still active, shook his head. "I stopped looking for tricks," he admitted, voice rough. "But I need to know why." Farooq, overhearing, leaned in. "Why her, Inspector? Or why us?" Hassan's laugh was dry, like sand on pavement. "Both, Farooq. Both." The Coptic Church's investigation neared its end. Father Ibrahim met Patriarch Cyril VI's committee in his study, the air heavy with incense and the weight of history. "The photographs, the healings, this unity," Ibrahim said, his grey beard catching lamplight. "It's her work." A skeptical theologian, Father Marcus, pressed. "No messages, no words. How do we know it's divine?" Ibrahim's voice held steady. "Her silence speaks louder than words. Look at these people, Muslim, Christian, together." Dr. Margaret Walsh, a British psychologist studying crowd behaviour, joined Fomi near the church, her notebook open, the scratch of her pen sharp. "No chaos, no hysteria," she said, voice puzzled. "Thousands, yet such order. It defies my theories." Fomi nodded, showing her a file which documented the healing. "This boy's paralysis, gone after touching the oil. Explain that." Walsh frowned, her voice sharp. "Placebo effect." Fomi's eyes narrowed. "Medical records don't lie. X-rays don't feel faith." By 1970, the apparitions dwindled to rare glimmers, the dome often dark under stars. Pilgrims still came, their prayers a soft tide, the air carrying jasmine's faint trace. On a chilly March night, oil seeped from the church walls, its drip echoing, its rose-like scent drawing gasps of admiration. A lame man, Sami, pressed a cloth to the stone and felt his legs steady, his cane clattering to the ground. "I walk," he shouted, voice piercing the crowd's hum. Fomi rushed over, his flashlight dancing. "His records showed a spinal defect," he told Walsh, stunned. "Now nothing." Walsh shook her head, no answer ready. On May 29, 1971, the final apparition came, brief and radiant. The woman stood for minutes, her hands blessing a few hundred faithful, doves humming softly before she faded. Mahmoud, her rosary beads clacking, whispered, "She's leaving, but her light stays." Farooq felt a pang, the clean scent lingering like a vow. The crowd stood silent, their breaths a collective sigh, the air thick with the scent of roses. In 1973, Patriarch Cyril VI declared the apparitions authentic. His words read over crackling loudspeakers, met with soft cheers in Zeitoun streets. Fomi's database, now global, catalogued over 1,000 healings, blindness, cancers, limbs restored. He met Cardinal Ratzinger, a Vatican researcher, in a Cairo cafe, the clink of teacups punctuating their talk. "This defies our theology," Ratzinger said, voice measured. "But the evidence is undeniable." Fomi nodded. "It's not just faith. It's a fact." Hossain, retired, sat with Farooq in the garage, the samovar hissing. "I wrote it all," Hossain said, voice softer than his old police bark. "But it's bigger than my reports." Farooq poured tea, steam rising. "We don't solve it, Inspector. We carry it." Zeitoun had changed, Its alleys were now a pilgrimage path quieter. The church walls, occasionally glistening with oil, drew steady visitors, their footsteps a faint echo of millions. Hassan's family opened their bakery to pilgrims, voices blending over warm bread. Imam Abdullah's successors preached Maryam's grace, their words crackling from the mosque, Christians nodding, crosses beside Qurans. Dr. Claude Bouchard, the physicist, still puzzled over the light's strange hum, telling a conference, "It's not natural, but it's real." Psychologists like Walsh noted the crowd's harmony, a mystery unsolved. Photographs, both clear and grainy, showed her robes, which were published worldwide. In 1976, Pope Paul VI acknowledged the extraordinary phenomena, his statement echoing over the radios. Zeitoun's legacy lived in stories, like Amwarda's, now a grandmother, showing her unscarred hands to her children, her voice soft over clinking dishes. "She saw me," she said. "That's enough." Farouk, greyer now, worked his wrenches, but his heart held that first night's light. He'd pause, staring at the dome, hearing the echo of a united crowd. A young seminarian, once Hossein the baker's son, studied under Father Ibrahim, his voice firm. "I saw her," he told his peers. "She showed us faith's power." The church stood as a beacon, its dome quiet but alive. On still nights, roses lingered in the air, and stories of healings passed like sacred bread. The question hung, soft as a prayer. How do you explain a miracle to a world craving answers? In Zeitoun, they didn't try. They lived it, their faith aflame kindled by a light that never faded. The light that crowned St. Mary's Dome faded on May 29, 1971, but Zeitoun's streets still hum with its echo, the air laced with the faint scent of roses where pilgrims tread worn cobblestones. The church, a quiet beacon, draws thousands yearly, their footsteps soft, their prayers a low tide of Arabic and Coptic blending in the dusk. Farouk Muhammad Atwa, now stooped and grey, works in his garage, the samovar hissing as he pours tea for a German student, her recorder clicking on. "You saw her first," she says, voice eager over the clatter of tools. Farouk's calloused hands pause, that clean, unearthly scent still vivid in his memory. "She was no illusion," he says. "She was light, changing us all." The church walls, occasionally glistening with fragrant oil, carry a jasmine-like holiness, drawing hands to touch stone warmed by decades of faith. Father Ibrahim, his voice frail yet firm, speaks to pilgrims in his study, the air thick with incense and the scent of old books. "Zeitoun showed us God's mercy knows no bounds," he says, robes rustling. Hossein, once the baker's son, now a seminarian under Ibrahim, adds, "I stood here as a boy, Muslim and Christian together. Her light bound us." His voice carries the weight of nights under the dome, hymns echoing in his heart. Dr. Ahmed Fomi, retired but tethered to his records, sits in a Cairo cafe, the clink of teacups sharp as he debates Dr. Margaret Walsh, a British psychologist. "Over 1,000 healings," Fomi says, voice steady. "Blindness, cancers, limbs restored, hospital verified." Walsh stirs her tea, spoon scraping, her frown deep. "Mass suggestion? Psychosomatic response." Fomi shakes his head, sliding a file across. "X-rays don't lie." Amwarda's fingers regrew. "Explain that." Walsh sighs, her voice tight. "I can't, not yet." Dr. Claude Bouchard, a physicist, joins them, his instruments hum still fresh in his mind. "The light's energy was unnatural," he says, voice sharp with wonder. "No refraction or atmospheric trick matches it." Fomi nods. The photos, films, thousands of them, from locals to journalists, show her robes, her hands. Consistent, undeniable. The scale of the apparitions, 3 years, with millions of witnesses, sets Zeitoun apart. The theological implications of the Zeitoun apparitions continued to reverberate through religious communities worldwide. The fact that the Virgin Mary had chosen to appear in a Muslim-majority country, manifesting healing and blessing to followers of Islam, as well as Christianity, challenged conventional understanding of how divine intervention operated in human affairs. Some Christian theologians saw the events as confirmation of Mary's role as universal mother, extending her maternal care beyond the boundaries of any single faith tradition. Islamic scholars engaged in their own complex analysis of the phenomena, drawing upon Quranic references to Mary as one of the most blessed women in history, while grappling with the implications of miraculous events occurring in a Christian liturgical setting. The fact that many of the documented healings had occurred among Muslim pilgrims suggested that divine mercy operated according to principles that transcended human religious categories, a conclusion that resonated with the mystical traditions within Islam while challenging more rigid interpretations of interfaith boundaries. Rabbi David Goldstein, a Jewish scholar from Jerusalem who had traveled to Cairo to investigate the apparitions, found himself confronting phenomena that resonated with accounts of divine presence in his tradition. The luminous manifestations reminded him of descriptions of the Shekinah, the dwelling presence of God that had appeared to the Israelites in the wilderness and filled Solomon's temple with glory. The interfaith character of the healings reflected the universal scope of divine compassion that the Hebrew prophets had proclaimed to all nations. His presence at Zeitoun, along with representatives from other religious traditions, created an unprecedented gathering of theological minds, focused on understanding events that seemed to transcend the boundaries between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The scholarly exchanges that took place during the summer months of 1968 would influence interfaith dialogue for decades to come, providing a concrete experience of shared encounter with the sacred that went beyond theoretical discussions of common beliefs. The apparitions reached their peak intensity during August, when the luminous figure appeared almost nightly for periods that sometimes extended for 6 or 7 hours. The phenomenon had become so elaborate that it resembled a choreographed celebration of light and blessing, with the Virgin Mary moving across the dome in graceful patterns, while doves of light circled overhead, and the mysterious oil flowed more abundantly from the church walls. The August 15th apparition, occurring on the Feast of the Assumption in the Christian calendar, was witnessed by nearly 500,000 people who had gathered from across the Middle East and around the world. The luminous figure appeared earlier than usual, just after sunset, and remained visible until dawn, creating what many observers described as the most beautiful and moving religious experience of their lives. The combination of visual splendor, spiritual presence, and healing phenomena created an atmosphere of sanctity that seemed to transform everyone present. Dr. Fommy, who had by now become the unofficial medical coordinator for documenting the healings, reported more than 200 verified cases of instantaneous healing during that single night. The conditions that were reversed included terminal cancers, congenital disabilities, mental illness, and injuries that had been considered medically hopeless. The sheer volume of documented miracles challenged even the most liberal definitions of what might be considered possible through natural processes. The international media coverage of the August 15th apparition brought the Zeitoun phenomena to the attention of Pope Paul VI, who was monitoring the events from Vatican City with intense interest. The Catholic Church's approach to apparition claims had always been cautious, requiring extensive investigation and verification before granting official recognition. However, the scale and character of the Zeitoun manifestations, combined with their endorsement by the Coptic Orthodox Church and the remarkable interfaith acceptance they had generated, created an unprecedented situation that demanded careful consideration. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, then a young theology professor who would later become Pope Benedict XVI, was among the Vatican researchers dispatched to investigate the Zeitoun apparitions. His report, filed in September 1968, acknowledged the extraordinary nature of the phenomena while noting the challenges they presented to traditional categories of Marian apparition. The fact that the Virgin Mary had appeared silently, offering only gestures of blessing rather than specific messages, distinguished the Zeitoun events from other recognized apparitions while making them difficult to dismiss as products of religious enthusiasm or theological projection. The scientific investigation of the apparitions had produced a substantial body of evidence that defied conventional explanation. In addition to the photographic and film documentation, researchers had collected samples of the mysterious oil, analyzed the electromagnetic readings associated with the luminous phenomena, and compiled medical records of healing cases that met the strictest standards for verification. The cumulative weight of this evidence created a compelling case for the reality of supernatural intervention, regardless of how such intervention might be understood within existing scientific paradigms. Professor Hans Müller, a German psychologist specializing in mass psychology and crowd behavior, had spent 3 months in Zeitoun studying the social dynamics of the apparition gatherings. His research focused on the remarkable absence of the psychological pathologies typically associated with large crowds, the spontaneous organization that emerged among pilgrims from diverse backgrounds, and the sustained nature of the witnesses' reports over a period of months. His findings challenged conventional theories about mass suggestion and collective delusion, suggesting that the Zeitoun events represented a genuine shared experience rather than a psychological phenomenon. The impact of the apparitions on individual lives continued to multiply as testimonies of healing and spiritual transformation spread through personal networks around the world. Letters poured into the Zeitoun parish from people who had experienced miraculous recoveries after applying oil that had been blessed at the apparition site, or who had received healing through prayers offered in connection with the Virgin Mary's manifestations in Cairo. The global reach of the phenomena suggested that the blessings associated with Zeitoun extended far beyond the physical boundaries of the church and neighborhood where they had originated. Sister Catherine Marie, the French nun who had wept at the sight of the luminous doves, had remained in Cairo throughout the summer to provide pastoral care to pilgrims. Her work involved coordinating with medical professionals, providing translation services for international visitors, and offering spiritual counseling to people whose lives had been transformed by their encounters with the apparitions. The experience had changed her own understanding of religious life, shifting her focus from contemplative withdrawal from the world to active engagement with the miraculous as it manifested in ordinary human circumstances. The economic and social transformation of Zeitoun itself reflected the broader impact of the apparitions on Egyptian society. The neighborhood that had been characterized by modest working-class families and small businesses had become an international destination, but the changes had been managed in ways that preserved the community's essential character. The pilgrims who came seeking healing and blessing found themselves welcomed into a social fabric that had been strengthened rather than disrupted by its encounter with the extraordinary. Local families who had opened their homes to pilgrims often discovered that their guests became lasting friends, creating international networks of relationships that transcended cultural and religious boundaries. Children who had grown up witnessing the nightly apparitions developed a matter-of-fact familiarity with the miraculous that would influence their entire approach to life and faith. The community had been permanently marked by its experience of divine visitation, creating a generational memory that would be passed down through families and neighborhoods for decades to come. The gradual decline in the frequency and intensity of the apparitions began in the autumn of 1968, though the phenomena continued sporadically through 1969 and into 1970. The Virgin Mary's appearances became less frequent, the luminous phenomena less elaborate, and the healing reports fewer in number, as if the intensive period of divine intervention was slowly transitioning into a phase of integration and lasting impact. Regular observers noted the change, but the declining frequency of apparitions did not diminish their significance or their continuing ability to attract pilgrims from around the world. By 1971, the nightly gatherings in Zeitoun had become smaller, composed primarily of local residents and dedicated pilgrims who maintained their vigil regardless of whether apparitions occurred. The global media attention had shifted to other stories, but the community that had been transformed by 3 years of miraculous visitation continued to live with the memory and meaning of what they had experienced. The church continued to attract visitors. The mysterious oil still occasionally appeared on the walls, and individual healings were still reported. However, the intense period of mass apparitions had clearly ended. The final documented apparition occurred on May 29, 1971, witnessed by several hundred people who had maintained their faithful presence throughout the declining period. The luminous figure appeared for only a few minutes, offering a final blessing to the assembly before fading into the ordinary darkness of a Cairo night. Those present described the farewell as both sad and triumphant, marking the end of an extraordinary chapter while affirming the permanent impact of what had been experienced during the 3 years of sustained divine visitation. The question lingers, soft as a prayer. How do you explain millions seeing the same light, healings defying science, a nation united by a silent gaze? In Zeitoun, they don't solve it. They live it, their faith aflame kindled by a woman who blessed them all. Share this story of light and unity with others, that its glow may touch hearts beyond these streets.